informational presentations as well as discuss and deliberate future decisions. There may also be some action voting items required on timely issues or to meet time restraint guidelines. Our meetings observe the requirements of the school code, legislative directives, the original Act 84 Sunshine Law, all subsequent amendments, judicial rulings, applicable regulations, and our district policies to the best of our understanding and ability. Are there any changes, additions, or deletions from the agenda?
Yes, there was one addition to the superintendent's report and it's noted in red.
Okay, thank you. Are there any others? If not, may I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We will start off with superintendent's comments.
Thank you, Madam President.
Yep, follow it.
We are proud to introduce 6 recommended candidates for approval by the superintendent's report. We continue to attract high-quality teachers who sole focus on every child, every day, without exception. As such, I am excited to introduce these highly quality educators who will be making a positive impact on our students. First is Heather Yurnell. You've heard of the Renaissance man. Well, Heather is a Renaissance woman. Heather was honored as a 2010 Athlete of the Year at Westchester University, where she earned her bachelor's degree in elementary education. While teaching at Solanco for the last 7 years, Heather has also earned her master's degree in assessment, curriculum, and teaching, as well as certifications in integrative STEM education. She'll be bringing her positive can-do attitude to 3rd grade students at Fritz Elementary. Welcome to Heather. Next we have is Alex Harmon. Alex is new to the profession. She earned her bachelor's degree in secondary education, biology from Millersville University. We have the luxury of conducting a multi-month interview with her as she taught at Huskin Middle School. Rachel and the team are so impressed with her that they are keeping her child-first attitude at the middle school as 7th grade science teacher. Welcome, Alex. Next, we have Ruth Costanzo. Ruth is joining us with a wealth of experience that we will put to good use as our newest special education consultant. In addition to earning her bachelor's degree in elementary education with dual major in early childhood education and an emphasis on academic and behavioral supports from Penn State University, just as beneficial as teacher for the IU's extended school year program and as a diagnostic kindergarten teacher and an itinerant learning support teacher at Hempfield School District. We look forward to seeing the positive impact Ruth will have on our special needs population. Welcome, Ruth. Christine DeSalva. Christine is coming to us from the school district of Lancaster, following a decade of teaching in New York. Christine earned her bachelor's degree in elementary education and English literature, and her master's degree in special education, both from Dowling College in New York. Christine will bring her multi-level, multi-state experience to the high school as one of our 2 emotional support teachers. Welcome to CV, Christine. Next, we have Jessica Cooper. Jessica is another buckskin with out-of-state experience. She earned her bachelor's degree in secondary education, English, from East Carolina University in North Carolina. She applied her skills to the students at Apex Friendship High School in Raleigh, North Carolina, before impressing the high school interview team and her personalized instruction experience and her positive focus on students. Dr. Fox and the rest of the high school are excited to welcome Jessica to the high school English department. Welcome, Jessica. Finally, we have Danielle Elliott. Danielle must have been talking to Jessica. Danielle has taught at the school district of Lancaster, mostly recently in North Carolina. She earned her bachelor's degree in elementary and special education and her master's degree in special education from Millersville University. She has been a coach for the Super Positive Empowerment Program for Girls on the Run and looks to continue the most positive difference as emotional support teacher at Smoketown Elementary. Welcome back to Pennsylvania, Danielle. Welcome to CV. That's all for tonight, Madam President.
Thank you, and welcome all of our new teachers. It seems as if we cast a wider and wider net every time we recruit. Are there any board comments at this time? I would add that I know a couple of us were at graduation, and as usual, it was a happy, successful, wonderful evening with lots of cheering. We'll never stop that. And we're ready to start preparing for next year's. At this point in the meeting, if there's anyone from the public that would like to address the board on an agenda item, would you please identify yourself? There being none, we'll move on to our action discussion items. The first is the approval of the superintendent's report. Is there anything special to note on that? Dr. Mann?
No.
No. If not, we'll move, I'll take a motion to approve since that's a timely item.
Motion to approve superintendent report.
Second.
Can we have a roll call vote,
I'm
please?
sorry, who was the second? Mr. Gensel.
Aye.
Mr. Benigno.
Aye.
Mr. Dillman.
Aye.
Mr. Hurst.
Aye.
Dr. Martin.
Aye.
Mrs. Groff.
Aye. Thank you. Change orders for the new Smoketown Elementary School. Mr. Johnson, you have 2 items for us.
I guess I'm doing change orders, so, since the architect
That-
left.
That's
So,
that's what my notes told me, so I guess you're doing change orders.
Ben, you need anything real quick?
no,
We trust you, Ken.
these 3 change orders are specific to the Smoketown project for the district office area. When the project was bid, that was before we added all the staff in the district office that we currently have. So we were looking at it, other administrators were looking at the layout and who was going where, and realized we were coming up quite short on the amount of offices we had. So it was a rearranging of some office areas, some additional HVAC, some electrical, and we also had Joshua had taken a look at the whole area in the boardroom and made sure we had all the technology needs we needed in there. So this has been reviewed by the architect, myself, and also our engineers, so we feel comfortable with where the numbers are. One you don't see on there is actually from the plumbing contractor. We get a credit back from him because we removed the toilet to make an office. So we still have plenty of bathrooms in the area.
We're not
so
going to say who's in that office, are we? No.
no, it just don't need to. So
Except we talk about them going to the throne. That's
we'll get them a crown.
Yeah.
So that's all I have on those. Those can go on the consent agenda.
Okay, and they're all district driven.
They are. Those are all district driven. That's correct.
Stormwater agreement.
Stormwater agreement. As part of this, it took, let's see, I think the plans were at DEP for over 9 months until they finally gave us an approval. We've gotten the conservation district approval, so we've gotten the plans recorded at the county, which is one piece of the puzzle. It allowed them to start to work over there, and I'm sure if you've driven by any time recently, you've seen the amount of outside work that's been going on, paving, concrete work, all those kind of things. So the other part of it, though, is an O&M agreement on the basins and the stormwater structures. So this has been reviewed by our site engineer. Also, our solicitor has reviewed it. They've gone back and forth with the township on a few things. This is as it's called, the clean version. So this does not have any of the markups and all of that on it. It does need signed and notarized. So I'm asking for approval of it this evening. So any other stormwater, basin or structure we have in the district, we typically have something along this lines that goes along with it. So covers the township, covers ourselves on what's required on both sides and what we have to do. So
again, this was unavoidable because we don't get the information we need in time.
yeah, and that was unfortunately at a higher level than any of us can talk to. So yeah, so if you folks wouldn't mind voting on this one this evening, that would be great. That we can get this one signed in by the township as well, and then we can get it recorded along with the plans we have already. So
Any questions or concerns?
No.
No one understands stormwater requirements? Okay, do I please have a motion?
I move we accept the stormwater agreement as presented.
Second.
We have a roll call vote, please.
Mr. Benigno.
Aye.
Mr. Dillman.
Aye.
Mr. Hurst.
Aye.
Dr. Martin.
Aye.
Mr. Gensel.
Aye.
Mrs. Croft.
Aye.
All right,
Thank
thank
you.
you very
Ken,
much.
how did you go with the bike rack?
I got one on order,
Okay, good.
so.
Thank you. Good.
Just
Thank
waiting- Just waiting on it to show up.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay. Budget update, Mrs. Hunsinger.
Good evening.
Anything open?
No. So last month I reviewed the proposed final budget with you. We do not have any significant changes to make any adjustments to the budget right now in June. We had been talking about some assessment appeals, but they have not been finalized, so I can't include them in this budget. Next week, we're going to be requesting approval of the actual final budget, but I wanted to touch base with you to see if you had any questions, any thoughts, and also to let you know that we did not have any changes to the budget.
It's just an unusual question. I'm sure everyone's been following the news from Harrisburg. We're getting close to when they supposedly have to finish the budget, the 30th of this month. In the case that they're more generous than we thought they might have been, do we have plans for that income? Are we going to put that against what would have come out of reserve, or do we have some back burner items that we had to eliminate?
Yeah, and that's going to be, yes, that's a bigger discussion, a bigger picture, because I want to close out this current year too, because I know that we're over budget with revenues, and positive, being over budget is a positive there. But if we do get a lot more money coming from the state, then what we can do is put that into a committed fund balance and look at, again, keeping our millage rate lower for the 24-25 fiscal year.
Okay, but it would keep us within the 8% requirements of reserves?
As long as we commit or assign any of those fund balance
It would
amounts.
be committed, okay.
Yes.
I never thought I'd be asking a question like that, never, ever. Anything else we need to know? If not, that will be on next week's agenda for a separate vote.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Here's the fun part, folks, policy review. Mr. Jensen was unable to attend, but Mrs. Kapka and Mr. Benigno were at that meeting to review this. I sat in on it basically to just be there if they needed information. Any decisions that were made, I didn't weigh in on. I said, what do you two want to do? So this is from board members, this isn't from me. So what we're going to do is simply go through down the list.
Yep.
He and I have reviewed just to make sure we have everything included here.
Mhm.
And let you know what the highlights were of what they changed. From what you have on the agenda, what's in green is what we changed.
Correct.
Am I right?
That's correct.
Okay, and there are a couple things we may just want to bring to your
That is
attention. So
correct.
I'm going to turn this over to Phil and remind you that if you have a copy of this, the general one that the PSBA provides us, you'll note on there that some of them, they make perfectly clear, are only recommendations for the board because they don't even have some of these policies. Go ahead, it's all yours.
So I'll make this as painless as possible. So if you guys have any questions or any concerns, stop me, let me know. Everything looks pretty good until we get to 003, which is functions. And this is just a note for the board. It's under administration regulations that as a board, we are allowed to review regulations and make changes to the administrative regulations if we so choose to. That's just a note for you guys.
That does show up in another policy.
So if you have any questions about that, feel free to shout out. 004, under the membership and then its expenses, line 2, we want to take out, we were going to take out line 2 and add out-of-state expenses to that.
When you're saying line 2, are you talking each school director shall receive like the second sentence?
Yes,
So you're deleting.
And that would be each school director shall receive board approval prior to attending an
Out-
out-of-state or
yes.
national
yes.
conference, which is the way we've always done it. I have
Correct.
all these down for you, if you don't catch it all,
Okay.
okay? And we also added something else, right?
Yeah, well, no, we're gonna remove where it says regions, because we don't do the regions.
Yeah.
We're gonna remove that out of that section as well.
Yeah.
Because we don't have regional seats that are all at large. So these are just minor.
Yeah, it
Minor
was
detail.
suggested it in case we ever change, but that's not gonna happen very quickly or very
Right.
soon. The other thing in there, we talked about adding that if you are going to a conference, you should let the board know in advance that you're
Correct.
going, and you should report back afterwards.
Absolutely. All right, then we get to 005 organization under order. We want to change, so it says for under officers, in the second meeting in October, we were simply just going to change it to our meeting in October. It doesn't have to be the second, it can be the first or the second, so either or. We want to just change that to our scheduled meeting in October. And then where it says no more than 3 other board members to convene in order to recommend a president and vice president, it's gonna be 2. We wanna change it to 2, not 3. So we have an uneven number, so there's not 4. Sounds like a tie per se. Does anybody have any questions on that?
The organizational meeting, the secretary. Oh, yeah, I got that approved.
You got that afterwards, so if you wanna speak to that
Oh,
again.
okay. PSBA put in its own idea of who should call our organizational meeting to order. And they didn't note in here that that was not in the school code. So
Right.
we talked to them, and we're going to change that to the way we've been doing, where the board secretary calls that meeting to order.
Again, just small minor details, but
Yeah,
just,
and
we just want
I
you to be
think
aware.
later there's another one where it talks about if the president and vice president are both absent.
Correct, that
And
as
it
well.
doesn't say who should call it to order. We'll add that in to make sure it's clear.
Yeah,
Quick question, it said the president and vice president may be reelected for 3 additional consecutive terms.
Yes, that's been that way
Number
for a
2.
couple of years now.
Okay, that's what I thought, it was in green on
well,
mine,
because
like
it
it
used to
got
say
changed.
4, we changed it to 3.
Oh, it used to be 4.
Yeah, I think it was 4 the way it was worded
It's
said
4 total, and now
but
it's
it was
not 3
worded-
consecutive, so it's still 4.
Yeah,
It's 3 okay.
1 plus 3.
So it's just the wording
Yeah.
change, it's not, okay, just wanna make sure.
It was just easier to change that number than
Right,
change the whole sentence.
okay.
Alright, where else am I? Alright. And then I think it's,
That's it for that one, right?
is it 006 under duty? Is that where we're at next? I don't know if that's.
Duties of the president and vice president was eliminated. They just didn't bother carrying it over.
No, this is about work sessions.
Work sessions. Where are you? In 006?
Is that was in 06, we said committee of the whole? Remember we wanted to take that, is that in 006,
Yep.
right?
Oh, that's-
So, yeah, we're gonna take out committee of the whole and just put in work sessions. We've always called them work sessions.
Yeah.
So we're going to just keep it back to work sessions, because personally, I don't like committee as a whole, it sounds, I don't know, just don't like it. And then the second paragraph under there. We just talked about getting rid of that completely, didn't we? Just
Getting rid of what? Where are you?
under committee of the whole. Why can't I find
No, we left it there. We just said, a meeting of the committee of the whole regularly scheduled may be called, and in the next sentence, the same thing.
Oh, that's right, in the second paragraph, it should say work session,
Yeah.
not
same
committee of
thing.
the whole, and work session needs to be capitalized.
Yeah.
Um,
But at the front end, the presiding officer for,
I don't remember that.
for the organizational meeting.
Right, you were gonna ask Marilyn about that, right?
Yeah, and, yeah, oh, okay, I had that in here, it's
Yeah.
all the same. Okay, I'm with you.
Okay, and then also
Believe me,
just,
this is, but we have had the original PSBA's change, our change, and then the final copy. So we're
Correct.
sitting there with 4 versions of this, trying to make sure we covered everything.
also in this section, just as a note, we currently have a resolution that allows the superintendent and the CFO to pay any bills in an extenuating circumstance. Adette and I were just talking, we probably need to make that into policy. if there's like, if we can't have a meeting for whatever reason, or something happens, or we have no, COVID part 2, if something strange happens, we need, instead of executing as a resolution, we need to create a policy that, but we're not gonna do that tonight, but that's something that the board is gonna need to think of in the future to do that. And then, and this is probably the longest one of the rest. In 006.1, attendance at electronically, we want to add into that, the board shall be notified if a request for remote participation is not honored. So like if for whatever reason, who's ever board president at that time says, you know what, ain't happening, he or she needs to notify the board that it's been denied. And then we also want to add to that, the board president with board approval or by a board member request may allow participation in executive session. If anybody has any questions about that?
I just felt that was too much power for a board
Yes.
president to keep someone out of the meeting. This is not right.
Anybody? Good, good. And then the last minor thing is in 008, the org chart. I would like the org chart added to the appendix. It's not currently there. I think it needs to be there. And then everything else is good from my standpoint, except for 011, and I believe we're going to discuss that tonight here shortly.
Yeah.
Other than that, if anybody has any questions? Let me.
I have a question for the secretary. Under 007, there's a line that says a copy of the policy manual shall be available in the administration during regular office hours. Do we have a copy of it?
Not a hard copy.
Do we have a copy of the policies available in the office? Or should we change that to read access to it?
Access to.
Access to,
Yeah.
that's
Okay.
good, yeah,
Then
we
we
didn't
better-
catch that last night,
You
yeah.
better change that to
Yeah, we need to
access.
change that then, yeah, please.
As Phil said, we have a couple of outstanding resolutions that need sort of put in. One being the one that we put in for COVID, so if there was an emergency, we think that should be in there because you don't always have 3 days' notice before an emergency comes up.
Correct.
Yeah,
Like if the office with the toilet and the toilet comes
Yeah.
back.
and we also have an outstanding, both of these resolutions stay until we retract them, but I think they belong in policy.
I agree.
The other one has to do with public comment during virtual meetings, and we'll pick that up back when we do 903. They did, as I say, they completely cut out the responsibilities of the president and the vice president. I didn't want to go playing with this one, so my suggestion is that we simply write ourselves, what is that, 6, 0, or 5?
That's fine.
005.1, and we'll write our president, vice president, and board secretary. And we do that at our convenience, if that's okay with all of you,
I think that's good.
okay? In
They-
which case,
They
yes,
cut that out
They cut it
they
out.
just eliminated it.
They got
to
rid of it.
put that responsibility back on each district to define how they want those.
Yeah,
roles
they
to
didn't
go.
even address it.
No, they
They
didn't.
didn't even address it, and that seemed as if it ought to be there in some way.
Yes, just explain what the limitations are, what the powers are, stuff
Yeah,
like that.
especially considering we went out of our way to make sure everyone understood the vice president was part of agenda building and such, so that every president can't just do it their way. That, when you put somebody in that office, everyone knows what they're to do. Any questions? I'm so glad to have these done. This has been a small nightmare, just these. We still have a lot left as far as policies, but I think this was one of the worst ones.
Yeah.
The ones that we care the most about, and the detail was most important. The rest is usually administrative. Okay, that also will be on the consent agenda. Review of student handbook.
Wait, Dave, do you want to talk about
Oh, I'm
principals?
sorry.
You're going to discuss the 111.
Yeah, we got this 011 about the principal.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, that's right. That's what you wanted me to address.
Yes.
PSBA recommends that these principles that we have on the wall actually be a policy. Some schools have it, some schools don't. There was absolutely no opinion between Phil, and Diana. So what we'll ask you, do you want us to print that up in policy or just leave it? We do vote on them every December.
Right, I think it's redundant to have it for policy and that, I think
Oh,
it's.
now you've got an opinion.
I've been thinking, I just thought about it, so
Yeah, okay.
I don't think.
What's
you
your
can have it.
pleasure, folks? You want us to put it in the policy or not?
No, if we're voting on them.
Yeah, I won't say so,
Okay,
sorry.
that
Redundancy.
settles that. Thank you. Okay, am I done?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Thank
Now
you.
we will move on to student handbook. Mrs. Meyer and Mrs. Schaefer. We have Mrs. Schaefer on Zoom. Are you there, Sarah?
I am, hello.
Hello.
Hi, so real quick sort of rundown how this works. I'm kind of just the owner of the handbook and I get changes sent to me and then I make the changes, recommended changes, and that's what you guys see in that document that looks like a disaster. So I usually provide what it's up here on the screen, just a brief rundown of some of the more significant changes. It looks like a lot and it is. All of the bulk of the significant changes were to that code of conduct that our PBIS team did. Everything else from my end was pretty routine and change. We made language more generic to reflect the fact that we're moving to Power School, but we're not quite there yet, so that was made just generally generic language. Updating staff, I take care of. Those are kind of the bulk of the changes that I did. Everything else that you see that looks like a lot is all from our PBIS team. So if you have any questions about that in particular, Sarah is the one to answer those questions, because she and her team are the ones that got me all of those changes.
Okay, do any of you have questions about the content of this other than the PBIS changes?
I do not.
Go ahead.
No, I don't have any
I
questions.
think you said you do have.
Oh, no, I don't have any, no.
Oh, okay.
It was really simple this year, up until we got the PBIS
Up until
changes.
Sarah got involved in it, right? Okay, thank you.
And so again, if you have questions for Sarah, I don't know if she wants to address them now, if you want to ask her offline, I don't know what,
Absolutely. Well, we'll turn this over to Sarah and see how
Okay.
to handle it. Thank you.
all right.
Sarah, was there anything you wanted to especially bring to our attention?
No, I just thought it would be a good opportunity just to say, since this is a public board meeting, I just wanted to give a review, a very quick review of what that code of conduct entails. I wanted to also give credit to the entire committee that worked numerous hours over multiple months. So that included, yes, the PBIS committee, that of course is led by me, with our spec consultants, Tyler Hoffman and Joelle Jones, our district coaches, Dawn Cabry for the elementary, Michelle Pletcher for the secondary, and we had multiple reviews and roundtables with our administration and our district leadership team. So from all of that work, it is a code of conduct revision, and we've always had that code of conduct within the handbook. But what our edits really do is it reorganized the code of conduct and it created a common language across K to 12. It just was a bit of a hodgepodge before. So this is related to a common language. We updated that language to reflect in our new student information system and the behavior add-ons in Power School. And it also is going to reflect all the MTSS work that we're doing across our district. So we did a real clear differentiation between the classroom managed behaviors and what happens in the office, because there's different level of behavior that has to happen at different places. We put procedural guidance and decision-making guides for the teachers and for administrations. We put definitions in that are very operational, that are leveled, and we also put in instructive and restorative approaches that deal with discipline. So that is, in general, what that new code of conduct, the revised code of conduct, is really addressing, which is really a reorganization and putting a common understanding of what we're doing K to 12.
Does anyone on the board have any questions or concerns or comments about those changes?
I just have a comment, Sarah, it's Diane,
Hi, Dan.
about the PBIS and the language across K to 12. I feel like that's essential for families in general, so I appreciate that very much so.
Thank you. I will pass that on to our team.
Anything else?
Sarah, this is Brad Dillman. Just a real quick question regarding the rollout of this, then assuming that it's approved and we move forward. what's the plan then to get everybody up to speed with all of these changes and the new language and terminology across all of the buildings, including the students?
So it is slightly combination of with our PBIS rollout. What we're going to be doing this summer is we're going to be doing another review at our administration retreat that's going to be happening on June 21st and 22nd. We're going to develop procedural guidance to put into our professional development over the summer, and then we'll roll it out in August. And we're going to provide copies to all of our staff in August, and then that's going to be just reviewed at different times during the beginning of the year in faculty meetings, in our PBIS conversations, and just in district building level team meetings.
And then how does that then make its way down, I use the word down, sorry, to the students?
So the main piece to this is how that is ultimately executed is through PBIS.
Okay.
So as we do our rollouts this summer, our development of our rollouts this summer, and get those pieces ready and they're basically ready to go for August 17th, and then the rollouts that are happening in the buildings, those teachers are going to know exactly what that looks like at the secondary. The last time I think I was at the school board meeting, we talked a little bit about Power School and our UCBS system with Power School, which is the way that we're going to be tracking behavior. This code of conduct is directly placed into that UCBS Power School piece. So all of this language is going to be integrated into our student information system. So when teachers go in to give acknowledgments, to look at challenges, they're going to have this language already embedded. And then the elementary school teams, as they begin their part of this, and they're not quite ready for the UCBS, but they will be sometime during next year. They're going to have whether it's a Google Doc or whatever that development of how they're going to put that together, they're going to have that language embedded into how they give their classroom acknowledgments and how they track their data.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? If not, then this also will be on the consent agenda next week. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Sarah.
Science and social studies. Dr. Mann, you have quite a few things on our agenda
Yes.
yourself, don't you?
So over the past year, we've been piloting science and social studies at the middle school level for using IXL. As you're aware, we use IXL, math, and reading actually K to 11 now. And they allowed us the opportunity to pilot science and social studies. And the feedback from the teachers is that they found it valuable and would like to continue with that. And so to continue with that, I need to get this contract approved that would allow us to continue that. Some of the positives with the science components of it, it will have the new steel standards in it, so it's up to date in that regard. The social studies component of it, again, matches well with what we do at the middle level. So that's the extent of that. If approved, this will be on the consent agenda next week.
I'm glad to hear we're taking the teachers' recommendations. They're the ones that have to work with it. Any questions on that one?
I do have a question, and I'm not questioning what you just said. I just want it for my own understanding. So with the IXL piece, and this might be a bigger question than it's meant to be, but as far as the teachers and what they're reporting on the IXL to families, is that consistent across the board?
It is not.
Okay.
And what we are working on, and in fact, on Thursday and Friday this week, Rachel has a middle level team getting together to work on just that piece of it. As far as like execution and so forth, we just finished our second full year of it, and so now we need to tighten it up because it's not consistent, across how it's being utilized. For example, like grading, someone grading something that's a summative, which is fine if it's summative, but if it's formative, which is then it should be graded. IXL has added new components to its resources. For example, you can actually go in and create a summative assessment if you want. So if in that event, that would be fine, as long as it's put together with some guidance. So we're putting that actually this Thursday and Friday to work on that and working on it at the other levels. I've been working with the department chairs, the high school level as well, and at the the elementary level, we have the reading and math specialist. But it's, so.
Yeah. I see that like kind of
Yeah.
across the board, but
Yeah.
okay, great, super. That was on that.
That brings up a concern, maybe your question wasn't larger, but I'll expand on it. Several years back, we did a grading study, for elementary and secondary, to get standard guidelines. And one of the things that was emphasized in that study was the difference between summative and formative. I wonder if it isn't time to review that, especially considering new programs.
I think, yeah, actually, we're actually talking about that today.
This discussion.
Yeah, we're working with, getting things updated for Power School as we make that transition.
Yeah.
And so we were looking at and talking about those type of things. So, yeah, I think it is.
Yeah,
I mean,
I think
it's,
formative exercises have taken on a whole new life of their own. We have veteran teachers who pretty much know how they handle it, but now they've got a new system. And I'm sure that our new teacher orientation always involves reviewing our grading policies, but it's been quite a few years since we put that in, and I think it's probably time to review and update it.
absolutely, especially when you think of it through the lens of the profile of a CB learner and,
Yes.
all those elements of it, as well as our new instructional model, comprehensive plan. It just makes sense that that be part of this comprehensive.
It was a great program, because at that time, we had teachers that had heavy weight on formative testing, and everybody had their own philosophy on that. We needed to have something that was unified. Good, and I'll look forward to hearing about that later.
Yep.
Okay, your next
Thanks.
issue,
Sure. All right, so next we have.
safe schools.
Safe schools. So, what you have here is, I've worked with Sarah in talking with the Center for Safe Schools. As part of the requirement for safe schools, you have to have what's called threat assessments. And we have that in place, and it's been in place since it's been required. And we have what's called a care team that guides the process whenever there's a threat and the way to get through that. Now, the state has changed some of the requirements over the past year and a half, trying to beefing it up a little bit, which is all good. The Center for Safe Schools has partnered with, Navigate 360. And as part of this, they have a grant for this first year that allow us to participate with them. And the big part of it is the professional development that goes along with it. We have stuff in place, but to make sure that the whole staff is up to where they need to be, as far as understanding what threat assessments look like and what to expect when that happens. Because someone may have an idea that a threat is this, and when the reality is, when you take into consideration all these other components, it's something else. So this training will be extremely valuable, in our opinion. And then the other component is that we will then use what's called this Navigate 360 as a way to monitor and record the information. In fact, I just got an email today from one of the buildings where they were working on their end of the year report, and they're, had they had this system in place, it would have helped them navigate the questions that they're asking me as far as where does it fall within the parameters of safe schools. So for this grant, what we're asking is for the approval of this. The grant would come into effect January. The Center for Safe Schools had put together 3 different cohorts. Cohort 1 will begin in August, which we obviously are not a part of. We would be a part of cohort 2, which will start in January.
This grant comes from,
It's part of, I have to double check, I think it's through the Center of Safe Schools, but they're partnering with, and I'm drawing a
I'm
blank on that.
sorry.
Yeah, that's all right. I forget the name of the organization they're partnering with.
Can I just take one sort of side thought when I talk about safe schools and threat assessments? I mentioned last week with my PSBA report, their new institute. for safe schools. Have we looked into participating in that at all?
Say it again, please.
PSBA has set up an institute for safe
Yes.
school training. Are we looking into
Yes,
participating?
we are. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And as part of the safe schools, and we'll talk about this later, there's new guidelines and standards that the state has put in place, which are great. And part of that is helping to address that, is why PSBA is actually even doing
Yeah.
to help address the standards and the requirements that are in place now for your safety directors as well as then your organization within your school districts.
From what I understand, they're not only doing that kind of training, they're also doing actual physical training with SROs and learning them through what it's like to have to deal with that.
Right, and we've been working with Fire SRO to do some of that also as well. And in fact, Officer Warner had participated in training this past fall. I forget the name of it. It's one of the, used to be an elementary school in the Elizabethtown School District that they've converted over, that they use actually for active shooter training and so forth, which is just good. I mean, to help our local first responders be up to speed as best they can if they have to respond to something
I know
like
the
that.
SROs all over the county, cooperate and training and such. Okay, thank you. My Plan PA.
My Plan PA, so. My Plan PA, what this is for is as part of the work that we are doing with our career and work standards that are required to do, and I would also argue are good. It's an important thing for us to do as a school district in preparing our young people for what comes next after life after high school, regardless of what that is. The state requires, as part of the 339 plan that we put in place several years ago, that there are certain artifacts at grades 5, 8, and 11 that we need to make sure that are in place, and we take students through that process. So that's one piece of this. Another piece of it is in looking at credentialing. What the state is putting out there and encouraging school districts, and again, I think it's a good move, on putting credentialing in place, actually industry-based credentials. And so in looking at how do we do that and how can we do that? Now, we do that in a small way with American Red Cross, is like a credential that we have. But there are other credentials that we can really look into and exploring. As part of my Plan PA is going to help us navigate all that and maintain the information. We use a program called Zello, which used to be called Career Cruising. I don't know if either of those names sound familiar to any of you. But that helps to, the guidance counselors and the teachers facilitate the process. This program itself is going to, I think, be on a bigger, larger scale as far as helping, as the students come through our programming, as they prepare for life after high school, navigate and help them make decisions. One of the things that Mel and I are excited about with this program, actually a couple things. One would be, we want to expand our internship program at the secondary level, and this will help us manage that and help facilitate that process. It's my desire, our desire, that at some point we get to a point where we have it as almost as a graduation requirement, that students have a meaningful internship experience. So hopefully in a couple of years you'll hear more about that, but I think that would be something of benefit for our students, regardless of their path, right? But having a meaningful internship experience. My Plan PA will help with that. The other big picture to keep in mind is Act 158. Act 158 is tied to the Keystone exams. So the state had put in place that students to graduate have to be proficient on the Keystone exams. And they've, over the past several years, have amended that and adjusted to what's called Act 158. Act 158 has now put in place several pathways to graduation. One pathway the first pathway is passing the Keystone exams. If you pass them, you're proficient, you've met the requirement. Another pathway would be, pathway 2 is a composite pathway. You know, nothing below basic, but I have a basic, but then my other 2 scores give me a composite score, and I think it's 4432, I think is the number, but you have a composite score that'll get you over that hump. The next couple pathways have a variety of things in them that are career-based, that whether it's internships, whether it's credentialing, things of that nature. Again, I think all good. I think it's important that the state put this in place that provide our young people a variety of opportunities to find their path, right? But also meet that requirement and not just be one threshold, that there's a variety of ways that this can happen. My Plan PA is going to also help us in that regard as far as managing the Act 158, because it's a major undertaking, because it's all students and students when they transfer into Conestoga Valley, regardless of where they're coming from, we have to see where they fit into this. If they've passed the Keystone exam somewhere else, we got to get that into our system. If they passed the Keystone exam, one of them, and failed the other two or are not proficient, we got to factor that in and then bring them up to speed as to where they are if they are going to graduate from us. This class that just graduated was the first class to go through that process.
If we're going to have a greatly expanded internship program, that takes a greatly expanded outreach to the community.
Absolutely. Well, and as part of our comprehensive plan, the community partnerships.
Yeah.
I mean, that there's a lot of behind the scene thought
Well,
in that area.
remember last
Absolutely.
week I passed out the luncheon information from the IU, which listed like 300 companies that provide internships. We need to scour through that list and see how many of them we can get to focus
Right.
on our kids.
Mel has been involved in a variety of organizations, whether it's the chamber as an example and so forth, to help make those connections. Mel, I'm drawing a blank. I think it's called Access or Excel, or the program is supposed to help us.
Inspire.
Inspire. And who's that through? Do you remember?
That's through the chamber as well as the Career Ready Lancaster has a piece working with that as well.
Right, and what they're trying to do there, and this has been a thing in the works for a number of years, and if they can really get it off the ground, I think it'd be a really good thing. It's to connect businesses, as you say, to the classroom. Often you have all these great ideas, but to maintain that and to get it rolling and to keep it up and going is another thing. Because everyone's well-intended, but everyone's also busy.
Well, all schools across the county are going to be doing this. So there's hardly a business that isn't going to hear from someone, and if we don't have it coordinated, we'll just be a lot of voices.
So this is basically a database. That's gonna help you organize all this, and I completely appreciate that, so fine.
Sorry about that.
Nope, got it.
Okay.
No, it's necessary, I get it.
Yeah, that'll be on the consent agenda next week.
Yeah, that does bring up, and this is really taking us a little bit off center again. But you talked about when we bring students in, because I have an idea about coordinating with all school districts for these kids that change schools in the middle of the year. But I'll drop that bomb later. Okay, is that it?
That's it.
Okay, all of these issues will be on the consent agenda, which means we move to the Buckskin Activities Alliance.
No, we need
No.
J. We need
What did
J
I
first.
miss?
You missed Comcast.
Comcast
Oh,
one.
Comcast. Oh, Josh, I'm sorry. Here, I thought I was gonna get through one without jumping over.
Dry toast of the evening, but I'm gonna talk about it anyway. So, real quick, back in January, I brought to you about the E-rate through the IU for direct fiber connections to 4 of the satellite sites. This one covers the 5th, so looking forward to the eventual everybody's out of Smoketown. We had 2 options. We could have continued on the month-to-month under the 2018 contract, or I looked at Comcast to reevaluate pricing. Let's just put it this way. This is less than half what the current month-to-month circuit connection would have been. So it's a 2-year agreement. It's going to get us through. It does have a month-to-month after that, but we reevaluate for a new contract because prices are cheaper. So it's on for agenda next week.
I would assume anything that saves us money, we're all for.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, now, Buckskin Activities Alliance, this is Myers.
Okay.
So we've been discussing a lot of the bylaws that have been in place for a while. Last one was updated about 4 years ago. And it just isn't really rolling with the way the organization is rolling. It's making it a little bit difficult. So we formed a subcommittee, as the bylaws stated that we needed to, and we met a couple of times for many different hours. And there's a few things that we want to get approval from you guys on to make it so that we can keep moving forward. And really, truly, the goal this school year is going to be, I'm going to be visiting the schools for their PTO meetings and the Booster Club meetings. There seems to be a disconnect in the school district of what the BAA really is. And if you're not a parent like me that's been around here almost 20 years, you really don't know unless it's constantly in your face. So we want to try to get some new families involved and let them know what the BAA is. So that's why we felt like some of these changes needed to happen. The first one being the membership. It wasn't very explanatory what you were, if you were a member. It made it seem like you had to be on a board to be in there, and that's really not the case. Once your child becomes a part of a club or an activity, you're a part of the BAA. So it's just a way for us to get more into attendance and hopefully involved. So we changed that from just one officer or a designee. So when we have our All Booster Club meeting in August, we're going to ask for that representative's name by the end of August in hopes that somebody will show up from that organization to 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 if we're really good meetings to get in there. So that's one change that we were looking for. Standing membership, we just changed a few different things, titles in there. The middle school principal was in there, and then the CFO or director of the business office was not in there. So we added that because we do work really closely with
I
that.
understand, actually, that is CFOO.
Yes. So we have what was originally in there, and then we wanted to see what you guys wanted us to put in there
Well,
to begin.
I think if you want to have your titles right, it's
CFOO.
CFOO or Director of Finance.
Okay,
Those are the two titles.
got it.
That CFOO is, what is it? Chief Financial and Operations Officer.
So we'll switch that.
CFO.
Okay, we'll switch that around. The other change was in section 3 for the voting membership. The way it was previously, we would have 6 on for one school year, 6 on for another school year, that they would overlap. The issue came about if we had the coaching representatives and they were in season, they cannot attend. So we would not have a quorum to be able to do too much with, or if they would say, well, we're having a booster club meeting, well, now we're bumping everything. So we would like to make it that one representative from every club. Everyone gets a vote. That way we don't have only 12 out of the 22, 23 that we offer. Everyone has a chance to vote because we're all voting. We would all like to see the money dispersed to many more clubs. So that's where that came into. The only part that we put in there that was different, they do have to attend at least 75% to have their vote. We just don't want to be able to come on voting days and we have to catch everybody up. So for them to be eligible to vote was the only change for that. We also put in there in section 4, we would like each member of the BAA to hold a minimum of 1 year. I mean, obviously we know if some things really come up and we would have to switch people, that would work, but it just makes more sense if one could represent each club to stay consistent. And under meetings, we switched, all voting members of the membership will receive the agenda now and the minutes prior to, before that was done there. So we switched that. And then under the BAA officers, this is how I actually got onto there. They changed this, but it was never really put in there. It's be a preferred member of the BAA for 1 year, being eligible to hold an officer position. Then under section 2, we would like to take some things off of the president so that I could get some more help from board and other members. We put in there that the vice president would work closely now with the district's public relations director for marketing items and things like that would need to take place. Everything else has stayed the same. And then this was the biggest change. Section 6, any booster club may submit one grant from now on, per fiscal year. Currently, you can submit in the fall, and then you can turn around and submit in the spring. So, and we didn't have a lot of fundraising opportunities with COVID. A lot of our things have gone away. I'm actually working with Mel too. We're bringing back the Buckskin Night at the Barnstormers. So that's we brought back the Harlem Wizards. So we're trying to bring in money because we are getting high requests for grants. So we want to kind of keep them funds in the bank as well for future. So that's the biggest one, would be the one grant proposal per fiscal year. But in order for them to get any grants, they have to help volunteer at our fundraisers, and
I love that one.
I need help. So we want to put that in there. That way, it's the attendance and the volunteering at the events, rather they
That allows them
donate.
to understand why we sometimes say yes and sometimes
Yeah,
say no.
we actually had our meeting last Monday, and we talked about even if they would like to start right from the very beginning, having 2 people assigned, like that your organization's going to have 2 all the time, so hopefully we can get more volunteers at events.
Any
That was all we
questions?
had.
I just have a quick question. So
Sure.
if you go on our website, you see that there are certain board members that are assigned to certain committees. And I'm on the Buckskins Activities Alliance Committee, and I never receive any
From
contact.
Becky?
Never, ever. I've been on it since I've been on the board, and I've never received any.
Well, Becky and we all just only took over last August.
Okay.
But I see you on our list, because I always ask why you're never at our meetings.
Yeah, because I never know when they are, so yeah.
On my agendas, it always says school board. I'm like, well, there's no school board.
Yeah,
So-
and Mr. Tally's on it too, and.
Yeah,
we've never-
you're both on her list, I
we've
can
never
see.
received any.
Okay, I'll
Could
make
you-
sure that, so Becky's stepping down, only simply because, she's our president of cheerleading, so she can't have 2 votes.
I understand.
So, we're getting a new secretary, so I'll make sure.
Yeah.
We'll run a test run to make sure, but
Okay.
we switched to every first Monday of the month. We don't have a meeting in July, but if you could definitely come August 11th, that's our all booster club meeting, and then we're gonna hold a BAA one right after that. So
If you-
I'll
if
make
you
sure.
give me- Make sure I get the information. I'll be there.
Absolutely, I will
Alright.
definitely make sure.
And
We
Mr.
want you
Mr.
guys
Talley.
there.
Mr. Tally, yeah.
Yeah, they're both on there. Hers is coming from Becky Ripchinsky at Gmail, so I don't, maybe you're a spam? Cause you even got these in her email.
They're not, I had never, this is the first time seeing any of this.
Oh, yeah, no, we'll make change of that for sure,
Okay,
yeah.
Thank you.
And I think they even CC'd you on some stuff, so yeah, I'll make sure we change all that.
Anything else? Okay, and I did check according to your contract with us, we have to approve this, which we'll do.
You do.
At the consent agenda.
Yes,
Okay, thank you.
thank you.
Back
Can
to
we
you,
check
Dr.
your email
Mann.
before I leave? Jen?
Sure.
And Dr. Crozier, you got 4 items there?
Your audio is
No.
picking up the subtitles of everything we're saying.
I'm not a man.
As always, smiling.
Because I'm cracking up.
How do you turn that off?
I'm trying to teach him how to use a Mac, and it's been a process today. So now we have subtitles and closed captioning going on. That's good though. Hey, access.
Good, I like subtitles.
Don't touch it.
Oh, we have had more tech things going on today. Oh, my gosh. We should have Josh sitting up here, is what we should have.
Sure, thing. So you're good.
Nope.
That's
Thank
what
you.
make me laugh the whole presentation. Okay. Couple of months ago, you had asked a question, Mrs. Groff, about the teacher evaluation system. And we shared that we were in the process of putting together a revision to that entire plan. And so tonight, we're so excited. This has been a year of work that we've put into this one document. So I know it looks like just, pages of text, but I'm telling you, this has been our heart and soul over the last couple of months. So Dr. Mann and I are just gonna walk you through the major highlights of the educator effectiveness plan. This is a really lengthy part of school code. We would be here all night if we were going deep into the weeds with the board. So we wanna give you the high level overview and then share some of the collaboration and opportunities that we have for teachers this school year. So we started our conversations with our work group by
asking the question, why is educator effectiveness so important? Why is this a critical part of our learning community? And we pulled just some of the most basic research out there that the biggest factors that contribute to student achievement, we know, are the teachers and the principals. And combined, they make up almost 60% of the impact on student achievement for any kid. So effective teachers, effective principals. Act 13, that's the part of the school code that governs principal and teacher evaluation, really gets to that 60% of impact. It's a process by which our teachers and our principals, both sides, have the opportunity for ongoing reflection and professional learning. And so for us, it was really important in July of 2021 when the state upgraded, they leveled up that part of the legislation, the educator effectiveness legislation. It's called Act 13 now. It was Act 82 as of July 2021, Act 13. And what was most significant from the state was this slide right here, where they started to really talk about the goals of educator effectiveness being more about educator growth than compliance. And that's the big theme to take away. In the past, these forms and check boxes and everything you had to do, it was compliance, compliance, compliance. Let's get this done. It's a part of what we have to do. With Act 13, they made some really significant changes to focus on this as a tool for professional learning with our teachers. So that shift was massive. And what it did was it caused us to go back to our plan, which I think was last revised in 2013, so 10 years ago. We knew it was time to level up and to upgrade what we were doing here in CV. So that prompted our work group, which Don will tell you a little bit about.
And so as part of that, and looking at our differentiated plan, we need to make sure that we had a variety of stakeholders at the table. Because again, it's to help address buy-in, but also just to make sure that we had these folks around the table to provide the input necessary to develop a solid plan. Because more minds around is beneficial than just single people sitting around trying to do this. So in working on this, we had 12 educators, K-12, we had nice representation there from the buildings, 5 administrators, 13 district office, and we had a facilitator, which was important. Brought in an IU 13 facilitator to help us guide the process. So it was Jill and I just getting back and being part of the team, not the person that's guiding the process. So the facilitator helped us in that, going throughout that. Seems like it was longer than 12 months, but but we had 5 meetings over a 12-month period to put this document together. And as we worked on that, it's really rooted in, as Jill mentioned about the Act 13, which is based on the Danielson model, which is the Danielson framework that has the 4 domains, and you can see it on the screen right here now. So when you're thinking about those 4 domains, and so when this plan started to come into focus, you need to make sure that each of these domains is balanced and appropriately represented in all the various activities that take place in there. Okay.
So within this model, talk about pathways with the software that Don just presented for students, right? Our educators have different pathways toward evaluation. And so this is where we're gonna keep it really high level because if you would see our master spreadsheet of all of our teachers and all of the data pieces and components, it gets really complicated really fast. So our first group are classroom teachers who are non-tenured. And what we love about this is for a non-tenured classroom teacher, the first 3 years that they're with us, 100% of their evaluation is observation and practice. So that comes from classroom observations, that comes through walkthroughs when the principal's popping in for a 15, 20-minute visit, comes from what we call anecdotal notes. They're kind of like, in our evaluation system, they're like Post-it notes electronically where you can say, hey, I noticed this today, or thanks for coming out to that parent event and taking the lead, and you can recognize staff for those achievements. And then other evidentiary sources, so that could be lesson plan review, that could be artifacts that the teacher brings. But for the most part, our new teachers were really honing in on what's happening in the classroom. They don't have to worry about any other pieces that you're gonna see on the next chart. So new teachers, they're getting those observations. We're focusing on the practice that's happening day to day. If you're a teacher with tenure in CV, you draw from the top 4 red bubbles there. So you may have
No red ones.
the red text. You may have 1 of these, 2 of these, 3 of these, or 4 of these.
Red text.
It depends on the students that you serve. So a classroom teacher with tenure, you're definitely going to have a component that is around your observation, your instructional practice, the Danielson domains that Don just shared. You might also have data that contributes to a portion. So if you look at that, you might have Keystone data, PSSA data, PVAS growth data, IEP data. Again, all of this comes down to the kids that are in front of you every day. So when I say we have a master spreadsheet with every single one of these columns and how many students have IEPs, oh, you get that piece of the pie. It really does go to that level of who's in the classroom each day. Classroom teachers also have what's called a student performance measure. It's a piece where they're writing a goal for a group of students in their class or in one of their courses that they would like to really focus in on and help move academically, social, emotionally, any of the areas really that line up with our CV instructional model. So that's a goal setting piece. And then our tenured teachers also get that building level score. So in the fall of every year, the state has a formula that they kind of mash together all of our performance data, attendance, PSSA, PVAS, all of the different pieces, and we get a score for each of our schools. Our tenured teachers have a piece of that observation chart that comes from that overall building level score. So it kind of contributes to the, we're all in this, we're all working toward some of the same goals. So those are our classroom teachers. They have homerooms, they have groups of students and courses assigned to them.
Can you run through me again? I'm trying to make sure I understand. Classroom teacher with voting level data versus without voting level data? Just what are the two, how does that delineate? I'm having trouble.
The tenured, they've been here more than 3 years.
Okay.
They get the building level data. Those
Okay.
non-tenured teachers, the state's saying, listen, we don't want you worrying about
Okay.
all of those other pieces right now. We just want you to focus on what teaching and learning is happening in your classroom each and every day. So the non-tenured new teachers,
So the
3
way
years in the
evaluation
profession.
is really the observational piece.
Yep.
For non-tenured, it's more observational data because they don't have any other data to pull from as far as, like you said, keystones testing, all that kind of stuff.
Well, they would have that, but the state is saying, look, you haven't been in the profession long enough for us to really hold you accountable for those types of data. Yep, we want you to really get in and focus on high quality instruction. Then after 3 years, we're giving you tenure. We're saying, okay, we've evaluated you 6 times in those 3 years. You're ready for that next level of student data being attributed to you.
Okay, I got it now, thank you.
Do you really find it valid to use building level data for an individual teacher?
So it's all in the way you look at it, right? When, as a principal, we had building level goals that we set for our students. We want to grow by this much in math. We want to grow by this much in reading. Those of you going to the school data retreats, that's what's going to happen. You're going to this one time. Yep, that's what's going to happen. We're going to set building level goals. And so what happens is when the whole building is focused on moving attendance in a certain direction, moving reading, moving mathematics, there's a sense of camaraderie. There's a sense of we can do this, that teacher efficacy that comes from it. And so it is really powerful when you see that data move in the direction that you've set your focus on as a building. So I've absolutely seen it be a motivator and a positive thing for the culture when it's aligned and coherent, which Don's going to talk to you about in a minute, how we have set this plan up to be aligned and coherent.
I'm not thinking of necessarily in terms of CV, but in a lot of school districts, that's a problem. We're fortunate, we get such great applicants and usually I'm very confident that we're bringing top quality in. In some districts, they don't have that advantage. Yet every teacher is saddled with the building level. I guess that's wrong.
Well, I will tell you what the state did in Act 13 to account for that. They actually put in a challenge multiplier, they call it. So kind of like the fair funding formula. That's how I've been explaining it. It's the fair funding formula for building level data. So they are now taking into account your rate of economically disadvantaged students, your number of Ls, they're looking at all of those factors, and so your building score gets weighted differently when you have more complexity in your system. So that was very much heard, and in Act 13 in 2021, they made that change to how the building scores were calculated.
As you were explaining some of this, I caught some phrases that come right out of our comprehensive plan and our CV learner plan, the instructional models, the best practices. I just wanted to let you know that I saw that and I heard that. I think that's really important that everything fits together.
Yeah, and Don will show you, we'll talk to you about the non-teaching professionals, and then I'm glad you caught that because it was a very intentional piece. It's what took us so long, is we spent so much time unpacking the profile, unpacking the instructional model, and saying, okay, at the classroom level now, how do you engage with both of those district level frameworks and components of the comprehensive plan?
Well, no,
Yep.
I appreciate that because we are focused on having everything connected, with our goals, and we all have the same ones. And when I was given this at our agenda meeting, what impressed me the most was the number of teachers involved in this. This isn't a top-down evaluation. It's boots on the ground saying this is what you have to look at to see what we're achieving. And I always like it when the teachers have that professional input.
Yeah, when Don says, Don and I sat off to the side and we were members of the group, that's what we were. This was absolutely created by teachers, designed by teachers, the guiding principles, every piece of
And
it
my guess is
came
teachers
from
are-
that consensus.
Teachers are stricter evaluators of each other than sometimes even administrators are.
Absolutely, absolutely.
I think it's wonderful. There were 20-some teachers involved in this, I understand.
12 teachers and then building administrators and district office administrators.
I think that's a great way to address it. I really do.
The next group, just to keep moving along here, the non-teaching professionals, again, that are non-tenured, and you can see some of the similar language that Jill used. You have the observation and practice. These are your individuals, would be your guidance counselors, your librarian, and things of that nature, non-teaching professionals. And so the walkthroughs, the annotative notes that we would do, and other evidentiary sources that would be available. Similar type of monitoring process, but just non-teaching professional. As far as the same non-teaching professional tenured folks, things that are added to that, you would see that we have the walkthroughs, the observation and practice, but then you have that building level data that then becomes a part of that, because now they are tenured, and so part of that, everything that Jill said is part of the process. Next slide here, when you're looking at this, it says the highlights. So again, as that committee started working, the things that really were important were when you think about being innovative. And why is that important? Well, we talk about it. I mean, we talk about, that we want that for our students, and we talk about, in theory, we want our teachers to be innovative. Well, then let's do it. Let's put it in practice. Let's make sure that we have the things in place, and so that we are looking at authentic, supportive ways for people to be innovative. Collaboration. Again, a very important component that, is part of the profile of CV learner, but also when the committee got together, it really collaborated on, all right, what does this look like? And there were times where we didn't agree, there were times where we partially agreed, and it really got down and dirty as far as looking at this. In the end, got to a place where the collaboration really provided a solid tool. So again, when you're thinking about that level of importance, collaboration is there. And then feedback, making sure that you have meaningful feedback, frequent feedback. And so when you look at the walkthroughs, when you look at the notes that are taken and so forth, it's meant to be that. That it's an ongoing process. It's not that once and done or something that's done over here and then I'll see you in a couple of weeks. It's meant to be an ongoing process. And so having those places and things in place to be able to do that. So, to your point, looking at the alignment, when you think about the educator effectiveness, we talk about the comprehensive plan, we talk about the profile of CV learner being the North Star or the lens that everything else flows. So when you're looking at everything else, you should be looking through the profile of a CV learner. And so that's the what, right? The how to that and the why, well, the why and the what, with the profile, the how is your instructional model. Well, how are we doing that? So then what this does is basically, as you're aware, operationalizes the profile of a CV learner. And so then how does that then inform Act 13? How does it inform the process? How does it guide the process so that it's not just an exercise, not just an exercise, it's an exercise that has meaning and is going to provide the supports in place so that, our educators are top-notch and that we're supporting them to do that and that they are providing the highest quality programming for our children that deserve that. So you can see that alignment, again, very intentional.
Does the best practices come under that instructional model document? Isn't there a
Yep,
that's in
that's
there?
it. Yep.
Okay.
You
Yeah,
got it.
There's a lot in that instructional model.
Yeah, okay.
So another highlight of the plan and the work that we spent a lot of time on as a team was coming up with the differentiated supervision modes. So what that means is when you're a tenured teacher, you've done your 3 years of 2 observations a year, 6 evaluations, you've been really intensively having that support. When you hit that tenure, you go on a cycle of every 4 years. You have 1 year where you get observed again and you actually go through that formal observation process. And then you have 3 years where you are choosing from one of these modes. So you're differentiated. You get to go on a different plan. And this is where, when we were looking at those guiding principles, this is where we had the most conversation about innovation, collaboration, ongoing feedback, not just from the administrators, but you hit it, Idette. This is where the teachers are saying, we want feedback from each other. We want to get out in each other's classrooms more. We want to talk more, not even in our school. I mean, we had teachers saying, man, high school teacher, I would love to go see how they're doing this component of the instructional model in a second grade classroom. So this group, and you can see how excited I'm getting, this group really, the ideas they were coming up with were some of the most creative and collaborative ways that I have heard in a really long time. So we're excited about these 3 options. If you're on the differentiated supervision plan, you would choose from one of these. The first one is an action research. So we have an option where you want to pick your focus and really dig into the research and the data and, evaluate where your students are and how they're progressing toward that goal. We've got a plan for you. We have peer collaboration. These were for the teachers who they want to get together with someone in their department, someone in their school, someone at a different level. When they look at the instructional model, let's say they choose blended learning. All right, we're going to all get together and we're going to talk about this. Or PBIS is their focus next year. Let's create a peer team, almost a professional learning community, but maybe not quite as structured as what that model entails, where they get together and they talk about, visit one another's classrooms and really reflect together on this problem of practice that they want to focus on. And then the last one we took right from the instructional model. So personalized learning, blended learning, really was moving in force prior to COVID in CV. We were one of the districts that we had teachers just going out there, taking risks and trying station rotation model, hybrid learning, some really innovative things were going on. COVID hit and it kind of slowed that down. And so this was a piece that the team really wanted to bring back. But to do it, we wanted to do it with excellence. We wanted to do it really well. And so this is where I'm going to tie in the other attachment that you have, the IU13 contract. So the IU13 runs a personalized learning academy. It's something they've been doing. Several of our CV teachers and administrators have been through this academy. So we're kind of jump-starting that pre-COVID course we were on really personalizing the opportunities for students. So we may have a cohort of teachers that they dive back into the Personalized Learning Academy. We would be contracting with the IU. This is money that Don and I have budgeted for in our district professional development funds this year. Again, because we're using ESSER for so many other things, we have a little bit there because we've shifted things out of those district funds into ESSER. So this is a contract that we would be asking the board to approve on the consent agenda next week. Cohort of teachers, K-12, intensive professional learning and coaching, if they choose this specific area for their differentiated supervision. Again, it's a hefty lift because it's multiple days of training and on-site coaching and credentialing that they'll be doing. But we had a lot of interest in this, and it directly ties to that instructional model. So that's a piece of the plan that we're excited about as well. So your tenured teachers would choose from one of these three, and then they would start working in their groups on their various projects throughout the year.
Do you think you'll have, based on the 12 teachers that talk, do you think you'll have like a good participation in each category? Or do you think everybody's gonna lean towards one or the other?
We feel it's going to be spread out. You know, we had really good dialogue. At first, we had a lot of groups, professional learning communities, peer club, and somebody said, look, I'm an introvert. I like to kind of do things on my own at my own pace. I don't necessarily want to be meeting with big groups of people every time we're together. And so, all right, let's take a look at action research as maybe an option for that. So it was really good discussion around our teacher personality types and what they need as adult learners and having the different options for them so that it meets who they are as learners as much as they're meeting the needs of our students as unique learners. So it is going to be interesting to see.
Yeah. Historically, peer collaboration has been something that there are barriers to it being effective. So we really worked at looking at what are those barriers, freeing up teachers to be able to collaborate with each other. So, I mean, that is one that has some structural challenges to it, but I think we've done a nice job, or the committee has done a nice job to address those.
And does the IU13 program, does that have a limitation on attendance for the price that they're?
A cap, a maximum number?
Yeah.
No, we did not talk about that. I mean, they run this county-wide, so they run pretty huge cohorts at times. Yeah, my concern would be the other way. We would need a minimum number that if we don't have enough teachers signing up for it, we're not gonna be able to run it. Yeah.
And what is the relationship with all of this and professional development?
So, Dawn, if you want to go to the next slide. That's a great piece.
Sorry if I'm getting
No, it's perfect. That was one of the things that this committee felt just adamant about, is if we really are going to take what's on this paper and make it a living, breathing process, then as a district, we need to allocate that professional learning time. It can't be figure out a way to get together after school on your own time to do this, right? It has to be dedicated professional learning time. And so if you noticed in the 23-24 academic calendar, we built additional early dismissals into that calendar. Those early dismissals were a direct result of the teacher input saying, we would like to have structured time, that if I'm a high school teacher and I want to get together with an elementary teacher, here's the time that the district has carved out. And so this becomes their professional goals, and because what they're choosing is going to connect to the instructional model, that's also the district PD we're delivering. That's also the school PD. So really that instructional model and the profile are the root of all of these other processes that kind of come back and forth in that work. So it directly correlates. We scheduled the early dismissal times. We are still kicking around, and this may be something we bring to the board for discussion. We are kicking around a time change on those early dismissals, possibly dismissing slightly earlier on early dismissal days, specifically for that elementary and secondary time to collaborate. So we're floating that and figuring out logistics and what that could look like. Not a significant shift, but even just a little bump gives us more time for K-12 work, because by the time elementary dismisses, secondary is almost wrapped up for the day, and we don't have as much quality time to get those groups together. Other highlights from the plan, again, this is a way that we really see a significant shift happening toward the profile of a CV learner, right? Because now we have tied this into our educator effectiveness plan. We're providing that intentional support. We're giving teachers the dedicated time to collaborate around those profile components and instructional model components. So it really is down at the classroom level now how the system really moves, right? We've set the big vision, we've set the comprehensive plan in place, but now we're down at what happens in every classroom in the district. And that's really exciting work. Also, as a part of this highlight, one of the things that was critical was that collaboration and the feedback between school administrators and the teachers. And so we have heard this over and over again. Our teachers want high quality feedback and meaningful dialogue with their administrators. And so again, we've set up a system now of beginning of the year goal setting meetings, mid-year meetings, end of year meetings. So we're getting more opportunities for that really authentic communication, reflecting on practice as it's lining up to the components of the profile and the instructional model. And then last but not least, there's our professional learning plan. So as we work on the district's year-long professional learning plan, when we know which areas our teachers have chosen as their focus areas, and we say, hey, 50% of the teachers pick PBIS next year. Well, guess what? The district is gonna spend their time on PBIS, because we'll have a system. That's really what we're doing. We're designing a system now that all the different parts talk to one another to support this shift that we're making to our learning community.
Have we, do we still have what was after our original differentiated evaluation? As I remember, it's been some time since that was instituted, but it was a mix of very easy things to do and some very challenging ones. So we're getting rid of that altogether, right?
That's the first step we did in this process, is we did a thorough evaluation of the original plan, and we said, what do we want to keep? What did we really like that was solid we want to keep? What could we tweak and revise, and what do we need to let go of? And so there are components of the original in this new plan, but that was our starting point. Yep.
I guess what I like best about this is it reminds me back when everybody was studying Finland to find out why they did so well, right?
Mm-hmm.
And one thing they found out was that their teachers spent more time with other teachers than they did with their students. And not just lesson planning and lesson sharing, but in all different approaches. And it convinced a lot of schools that who believed it but did nothing about it, that the more time teachers had to work together, the better they became.
Mm-hmm. That collaboration is
So I'm
huge.
gonna play off of that for a hot second, only because I know a lot of teachers, I'm married to one, and just the time to pursue some of those chosen categories is like a challenge on the day-to-day. So I think there needs to be a real transparent effort between families who
Mm-hmm.
might not understand the early dismissal
Mm-hmm.
could be a real benefit, and then compared to the teachers and what time they really do need, because there's not a second of the day that they're not doing something already.
That's right.
So just having them be able to have the time to pursue something that they're choosing, to make sure that they have time to dedicate to it, to make it purposeful and meaningful. Because if they don't have the time to do it, it's gonna be a compliance thing. Yep, check that off, did that.
That's right.
You know what I mean? So I think just making sure that all bases are covered and everybody has the time and understanding that they need.
It's the number one theme that every teacher in every meeting came back to. We can do this if we have time that's allocated for this work. We want to do this, but it's hard at 4:30 in the afternoon and everyone's running around. It's hard to pull a group together and
one more thing on your plate.
Yep, that was a huge piece of our discussion, is making sure that we schedule those opportunities.
So if I understand correctly, what you're asking us to approve next week is the contract?
The contract, correct. You don't need to approve the plan. The plan is an FYI for the board. This is how we evaluate, but that contract would need approval next
And
week.
you said that comes out of Esther's for PD? or-
This does not, this comes out of the district. Don and I have a budget for district professional development. So this is slated to come out of there, but because we've moved so much out of our district budget into ESSER, it created that hole. So we didn't ask for any more money in our PD budget than we normally would have because we've got ESSER as that patch right now.
I had a question similar to Mark's regarding the actual IU contract and how it's scalable based upon the number of participants. Just based on what I'm seeing, it's a daily rate, the number of staff is to be determined. I think it would be wise for us to understand, is that a flat rate regardless of whether you have 1 or 200?
Gotcha.
I just wouldn't want any surprises with the IU coming back and saying, well, you have 75 people, now our costs are doubled.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I will get that information.
Good.
Anything else?
When is this again implemented again? Is that for?
So we have rollout scheduled for August. Each school has representatives that were on the Act 13 work group. So we will be working with our administrators. They actually started creating, the teachers are building their own professional learning for their colleagues. So it'll be a shared rollout between the school administrators and the teacher leaders at their buildings.
Gotcha. I'd love to hear how this is going then. At some point after, several months, just to see particularly how the breakdown is and what categories are being chosen and just how that's working out. Just a kind of a summary of the effectiveness of it and what teachers are choosing.
And I would
Which
add to
people
that
here.
maybe some challenges that have come up too, because I like to hear not all the good things, but also some of the maybe the hiccups that are real life. I think it's important.
You got it. Yeah, first trimester, usually by the end of October, everybody is locked in. Their plans are in the system. We would have really good information for you early November to share.
Cool, that'd be great.
Any other questions on that piece? I'm here for a while, so.
Anything else?
Okay,
What do you need, Josh?
it's not closed, it's not quoting me anymore.
Creeping over here.
It's distracting.
Okay, are you moving on now to home education policies?
Home education policies, more
These are
policies.
We don't have to review those.
We did the review for you, exactly. These policies will follow our review. So tonight, is this first reading? No.
This is administrative review. Next week will be first reading.
reading.
So, yes, but Thursday, the agenda will go live on Thursday because we don't work Fridays, so, yeah.
And as I understand, basically it's all legislatively required.
You got it.
Sure.
Yep, and for the most part, we took the PSBA versions as they were sent to us. We're just gonna walk you through real quick the why we're presenting all of these and the big change that has the potential to impact all of our schools really next year. So the first piece here, in 2022, Act 55 was passed. It's one of those omnibus, it's one of those everything's in it kind of bills that comes out of the legislature. Section 1327 of our school codes. This is just our home education programs. They had some amendments and changes that go into effect for this school year. 4 district policies, all right? So this is the quick summary of hours that Don and I spent dissecting what we have compared to the PSBA. 137, we have this policy in CV, but we are recommending a few revisions to it based on what PSBA sent us. This is our existing policy that talks about home education, homeschooling here in CV. 137.1, this is a policy that's also been around for a while. However, for whatever reason, we didn't adopt this one. This was not in our set of policies. But it is recommended to have it. It outlines students coming in for extracurriculars, walks through eligibility requirements, and again, pretty straightforward, standard across the
We probably
state.
didn't have it because it was already written in law. So we didn't also have it. We can't take all the law to make the policies.
Right. This maybe goes into a little more detail
Yeah,
because
now it
of the
does.
changes now with the new
Now it
legislation.
does.
137.2, this will be a brand new policy to school districts across the state. So this is one of our big changes. Home education students are now able to participate in co-curricular. So before it was extracurricular, outside of the school day, sports, activities happening after school hours. Now, home education students are able to participate in co-curricular, so band, orchestra, things that supplement the core subjects, but also academic courses. So we are able to admit students who are technically homeschoolers into our schools for specific academic courses. And we'll talk to you about very specific guidelines on what and how much and how often. And then the last policy that we will have up for review is the participation in career and technical education programs. So again, this is new. This came out of the Act 55 legislation where our homeschoolers can now be eligible to go to the CTC programs as a CV student as part of this new legislation.
But they will have to attend on the same schedule and grounds that we all.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yep.
So they may be homeschooled, and they want to go to CTC, now they're gonna have to be there every day.
That's in that, so Don and I held a focus group, we pulled together several of our homeschool, home education families, and we said, hey, this is where we're leaning, tell us what you would be most interested in, what are the implications for you? And that was probably the number one concern. They do register as Conestoga Valley students, and we are held to the same accountability standards for that student as for every CV student. So when you choose calculus, you need to come every day at 8:00 a.m. Monday through Friday for calculus. And that was a concern. One of the
That's one of
great
the reasons
benefits.
some of them are not in school.
One of the benefits of home education is there's a flexible schedule, there's reasons for, and coming in every day at 8 a.m. will be a drawback, but it is a piece that the more research we've done into this, they have to meet our attendance guidelines. So we have some options. We have making this workable, operationalizing it. CVVA is an option. There's flexibility there, but you can come in person to still get some support and some help. So on that procedural end of things, we'll have some options to present to our
The other thing
families.
we'll have to watch closely is we don't have people listing themselves as homeschool when they're really cyber school students.
We get notified by the cyber schools because they want payment. And so they try and do
If
that.
they
Yeah.
transfer
Because
in, right.
My thing is, if we're paying cyber school and then we're providing some of the classes, then we
Yes.
should pay less tuition.
Yes.
Because they're not giving all of the services, we are.
Right.
And one of these days, there's gonna be a big fight about that issue, I'm sure.
Yeah, because because we have to enroll all of these students in our PIM system and have the state ID assigned to them, we would pick up any duplicate enrolled students from another organization. Don, if you go just real quick,
And same thing
right
is
there.
if they move out of the district. A
Yes.
lot of times homeschoolers, even cyber school parents, don't let us know. And I don't think that's on purpose, they just never think of it. But, there were some schools at one point that weren't auditing that for themselves, they were just paying the bills,
Right,
no matter
That's
where
not
they lived.
CV, I bet.
Excuse me?
I said, that's not CV.
that is not.
No, we were
We still
auditing,
have that
there were schools
data.
in Lancaster County that did not audit addresses, and people had moved out and they were still paying for them. But
Well,
that's easier to do now.
it is.
Easier to audit.
At this piece, so on this slide, you see it, because this really addresses it is very specific. So yes, you can come in for academic courses and co-curricular, but only for 1/4 of the school day. So families would need to enroll, go through our enrollment process, register, get a CV ID, get a state ID for
104 minutes at the high school, so we have a 70-minute block, so really it makes sense to come in for one block, right, of the high school. The middle school, 101 minutes, we have 50-minute periods, so you could come in for 2 periods at a middle school. And then elementary, 101 minutes, so that we usually run a 90-minute ELA, a 90-minute math block, so you would probably come in for one of those, or band, orchestra, music, another course like that. So it is very specific, the legislation is very specific, and those blocks would need to be back to back unless the parent's gonna provide supervision in between. I mean, the policy, you'll see it goes into a lot of detail about who's responsible for what. So that's a critical piece that we would wanna make sure all of our families understood.
Most difficult, I would think, in elementary, even though we do have some blended students in elementary, because sometimes those teachers choose to use a larger block of time for a special lesson.
Right, and that's why we wanna
They don't
kind of
have a
say,
set
hey,
schedule.
here's this option, if you want the flexibility, here's a virtual option that might work. If you're good at locking in on our schedule and being here every day and your attendance is counting, here are options and here's a way to do that.
There's always the challenge of like special events, different things that
Yeah,
schedule
that's
itself is
right.
changing.
With elementary,
Keep
yeah, they don't
everyone
have a set of
informed.
schedule as the high school, secondary day. Okay.
So those are really the main overviews. The rest of the slides just kind of give you more of a summary. There's the dual enrollment piece. They need to come in and be dual enrolled in our program and their home education program. So we're at the policy stage right now. This is something that at the IU13, when Don and I go to the curriculum coordinators meetings, the countywide meetings, we all have been kind of sharing what we have and what are you doing and how are you setting this up? And so we've been getting a lot of ideas about the process and the procedure, the communication to families. We wanted to have this in front of you, and then in July, we'll work on those logistical pieces and reach out to our home education families. Really, really helpful insight from the group that we had. We pulled a Zoom together and just got some feedback on the process, and it was really helpful information from that group.
I have haven't put it out, I have a proposed policy change that we require most of the county to all have the same policy. And I'm thinking maybe your curriculum coordinators would be the one to bring that to.
Ooh.
I've been working on this for years.
I'm intrigued.
I would let you know, I guess I didn't realize that, all the curriculum coordinators were that closely connected. But that might make this easier. I will be in touch.
That's the group. We stay consistent. Don, what are you smiling about over there?
All right. School dismissal manager.
School dismissal manager, we talked about this several times this year. This is the app that Leola piloted for us this year for parent pickup. Just absolute resounding positive feedback. There were a couple of blips in the beginning. Getting everybody set up was, but once we did, I was over there early May, end of April, early May, to watch the dismissal line, and it's a well-oiled machine. I don't know, Mark, if you have any feedback on it.
It seems like it's worked really well. There were some additional glitches they found where it happened to one of my children where for a whole month it set them up as parent pickup. So the first day we're like, why is he on the bus? And because he missed the bus call out and because he was playing something and they just didn't catch, the teacher thought he was being picked up. Luckily that was the first day and not a whole month of us wondering. I think we would have picked up on that eventually. Because we're getting off the bus for a month. Yeah, he's home. I hope somebody's feeding him. So, no, there's some little things like that because it is still app. So like anything, it's always, and I had a conversation with another parent like that, like you gotta babysit some things. It's still app-based, it's electronic, you just make sure you're on top of it, but the school was really great at anything I know that came up between Mrs. Miller and then of course Taylor to kind of figure out, okay, what do we have to do to navigate some of this? And that never came up before, let's be on top of that. But yeah, it seems like it's resounding, made things so much easier for them. and for parents.
Yeah, and the safety aspect was one of the things that the administrators really talked about. We had Brian Bogart, he's a second grade teacher at Leola. He really led the charge on this and just poured hours into making sure this went smoothly at Leola. And I asked him to come share with the other elementary principals just what worked, what was the feedback, and that was one of the biggest takeaways. We kept coming back to that safety piece, except when we're not putting your kid on a bus. For the most
still safe.
part.
He was still
He was
safe.
still safe. We knew where every kid was. And that's exactly it. We knew from that app where every child was every day, what was happening, and all of the features that can be built in there to make sure that every kid is getting paired with the right adult at the end of the school day. So this is all 4 of our elementaries now would like to move to this process starting in the fall. So we've really learned from Leola's implementation. Principals are working on a plan together to start communicating with families even over the summer as they put out newsletters. Here's what to expect, download the app, do these steps ahead of time. But then really when we get back to school, it's like a 2 to 3 week teaching and implementation time with the parent pickup people. So this would be the agreement for next year for all 4 elementaries that we will have on consent for next week.
Will this also simplify the case where there's an emergency change and who picks up a given child?
You got it. That
When
data,
that has to
it-
change, that can get scary because it's very easy if you don't have the proper permissions already on file and they suddenly have somebody else coming to pick up their child.
Brian shared the data on it. It was like 1,200 contacts to the office about a change in pickup you can do it right there in the app. Hey, instead of me, my mom's coming, here's her name, you can preload her picture, her name, her phone number in the app, click on grandma, and grandma shows up. So when he shared the data, it was well over 1,000 office interactions, though, phone calls, emails, communications that this app saved during the school day because it's so easy to go in and make those changes.
It's good.
You
We
got
had
it.
to utilize that several times and it's much easier.
Well, and it's scary for the school. I mean, they're very sensitive to, releasing your child to someone else. I would not be surprised.
So I have a question. It says set up training and support for 1 school year. So once you have the app and you know how to use it, you don't pay for it? Outside of that 1 year?
No, it's 22 every year.
Okay, all right.
So I think it's more the setup and support for that year. They'll do the training with us,
what
but
if
it's
we
more
already-
the setup and support.
What if we already know how to use it? Like next year, everybody don't know how to use it.
Yeah, I think that's the annual fee.
Tell them they're.
I'll tell them to change that language, yes.
that.
Or at the very least, next year it should just be support, $2,200. Use and support that.
Use and
Use and
support,
support.
yep,
But yeah,
yep.
All right, sorry.
I'm surprised Brad didn't jump on that.
I know, right? Brad, I got you tonight,
You
man.
just didn't get a chance to.
Got you.
He had it highlighted, he was just waiting.
Okay. Any other questions on that? Phonics program.
Okay, we only have 3 more with me. All right, here we go. This is Geode's decodable text. So every year with our Science of Reading piece, we keep adding another component. So the Geode's decodable texts are readers this big that they line up to the Foundation's units. So it's the application of Foundation. So we'll do the lesson, we do the chants, we go through the phonics piece. Then this is the piece for 1st and 2nd graders where now they get to practice those blends and the sounds that they were doing in the Foundation's lessons in their decodable text. As part of our federal programs piece, Fritz actually came out as being in need of some additional funding to address our equity pieces within Title I. And so they have the opportunity to make this purchase to really just connect the Foundation's instruction to now the text in kids' hands. So when you read this 2nd grade book, it should follow the scope and sequence of what they just covered in Foundations. Right now, our teachers are searching and finding those resources. They're out there on different websites and printing off little readers and things like that. This is actually a published set that directly aligns to foundations.
Does this include the take-home stuff then, where they like, the kids would bring home?
There are
something?
Blackline masters of this, so you can make copies of these, like your little bag of books
Yeah.
that we're used to. Yes, that is
That kind of a deal.
how this would be used to some degree.
Okay, any questions? All right, then these 5 issues will all be on the consent agenda next week, and we will move on. We're still here with Dr. Kozer, but Adele, I think, is joining in the ESSER monitoring update.
We have one more IU.
Oh,
P, and this
no,
one does
that's
need
right. I'm
action
thinking
this
that's the
evening.
Same IU program, I'm sorry.
No, see, I was quiet for a couple months. I saved it all up for June. So this contract is IU 13. One of their consultants is actually going to be holding school improvement, continuous improvement data retreats at each of our schools. It started out of the requirement for Title I that each school writes a school level plan. Our principals have not had extensive training in how to analyze building-wide data, line it up with the comprehensive plan, profile and CV instructional model, and come up with those continuous improvement action plans for their building. And so Greg McGuff from the IU is going to be conducting these retreats at each of our schools. For our title schools, we'll be using federal funds, but Brownstown wanted to get in on it. We wanted to make sure that everybody who wanted to had the opportunity. So for the Brownstown one, that'll be coming from our professional development district funds. It's a one-day stakeholder engagement, families, community partners, teachers, administrator deep dive into data trends for continuous improvement. So it really helps professional learning for our principals, but it also ends in really clear school goals that will drive what's happening at the buildings for next school year. This is the year coming up that we will be monitored for all of our titles, all of our federal programs, and so it's also a really important training component because we want to make sure that we have dotted every I and crossed every T that we need to in anticipation of that monitoring visit as well.
This does not apply at the high school level.
It does not this year. When we started creating this, the high school principal situation was up in the air. Definitely would be something we can talk to Dr. Fox about. But this is all happening in the next 2 weeks. And so we didn't necessarily want to dump this on a brand new principal who wasn't involved in any of the conversations leading up to it, but absolutely would be beneficial for the high school as well.
Any other questions? Okay, as I was saying.
She needs a
Oh,
motion.
I just put your hand
She
up.
needs a motion tonight, she wants to approve.
Yeah, this one needs approved tonight.
Oh, I'm
Please.
sorry. I didn't realize that. We need approval for the IU 13. Is that a contract? Okay, and the federal funds, those are pass-through funds?
These federal funds would be our Title I funds.
Okay. Okay, then I need a motion to approve the IU 13 federal program school retreats.
Motion to approve the IU 13 federal program school retreats.
Second.
I have a roll call vote, please.
Mr. Dillman?
Aye.
Mr. Hurst?
Aye.
Dr. Martin?
Aye.
Mr. Gensel?
Aye.
Mr. Benigno?
Aye.
Mrs. Groff?
Aye. Okay, and the rest of them will be on the consent agenda, right?
Yes.
Now, the ESSER,
ESSER monitoring update. Where's my good buddy? We are up to our ears in ESSER.
Oh, we are.
What will we do when we don't have it anymore? I can think of many things I will do with my time. All right, ESSER. You have in your executive content, you have the actual summary from the monitors. If you recall, Adele and Joanne and Laurie Groff and I, we went through, and Joshua helped out too with technology, an intensive week of pulling probably 50 different documents, and it was wild. So this was the results of that monitoring visit. Adele's going to talk to you about the fraud policy in a minute. That was our biggest takeaway. That was our highest priority. The other findings that you'll browse through
really were good learning opportunities for us. I mean, these are things that were under the Uniform Grant Guidance, the UGG regulations of federal funding. We've been getting monitored and audited on federal programs for years, and we have no one has ever pointed these things out to us. And so it truly was a learning experience. We said, oh, we need to go to Sam.
I have one question related to that document. Inasmuch as it's an executive content document, any questions for that must be held for executive session?
Okay. Gotcha.
That was the question. I was asking you.
Oh, you were
If any
asking me.
questions
I thought you were
should be
telling
held
me
for
that's what
executive session.
happens.
Would that be most appropriate?
I think so, because I'm
Okay.
giving the high-level overview here
Okay.
of
Fine.
our takeaways, couple of tweaks, things in our practice that we weren't aware of that we needed to have as additional documentation. But the one piece that was the major finding was the lack of a fraud policy in the district. And
Okay.
so Adele talked to you a little bit about that.
Right, so we didn't know that we needed a fraud policy. I double-checked all of our policies, it wasn't there. Reached out to PSBA and they sent us one. So it's pretty straightforward. You know, the first section of it defines what fraud is, and then the other section defines what we're supposed to do when we take, and how we're supposed to take action when we suspect that there is fraud or when something's being reported to us regarding fraud. It does state too that we have to have a very strong set of internal controls, which we do. Every year when the auditors come out, we update, review our internal controls. They make any suggestions for us. So, and just having enough, what we'll call a segregation of duties as well within the business office, that you don't have one person who has too much control over an entire transaction, that there's a lot of different levels of review and people being involved. So it's just pretty straightforward, but that was one takeaway from them. So we'd like to get this on the roll for being approved. I will tell you, just a few minutes ago, I was actually reading a PASBO report, and it was talking about some of the monitoring that other districts are going through now. So I think we were kind of more on the front end when we were monitored. They are reporting a lot of the same things too, that there were fraud policies or other issues that they were not aware of through all of their years of having been audited. So I think it was a good experience in that you had this group monitor us, and they were being specifically directed to help us and identify areas, and I'm sure that they'll continue to do that throughout. But really, it was just some of the same repeat types comments that they had everywhere.
This is a PSBA policy?
Yes.
Had they never sent us this recommendation before?
I guess not. That's why I was baffled.
That's why there were a couple of places we were.
So they had it, but they never
really
shared it with
confused.
us?
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. And one thing, and
I would assume they would have picked that up in the review we're doing now.
I'm sure, I'm sure.
No,
I'm
maybe
sure.
not.
And I don't want to steal Jill's thunder, but one comment that they made at the end of the week when we were wrapping up our last meeting with them was they have never seen a school district that has self-corrected so quickly. I mean, we were on
We
it.
fixed everything, like the
Immediately.
day they told us about it, we completely changed the whole process.
Did they
We
give you
came
the
back the
impression
next
that a
day.
lot of districts don't have this policy?
Oh, absolutely.
Or maybe you guys should get in
Yeah.
touch with PSBA and have them put that in their next
Yeah,
bulletin.
yeah.
Yeah, it's that federal programs piece talking to the
Yeah.
state level
Yeah.
piece, and that's where, in this whole ESSER
I mean,
process,
then I'd certainly
we
as
found
well,
so
if there
much
are that many
mismatch.
school districts who don't have the policy,
Right.
they're the way to get that out.
Right. Yeah, but I do want to just really give a public shout out. Joanne Dickler, our county
Yes.
manager, Laurie Groff, our admin assistant for federal programs, were just unbelievable through this process. I mean, they put so much time into, when I tell you, the most minute document, scanning it in, getting it to the right place. I mean, it's a cumbersome system, and the two of them were absolute rock stars to get us to where we were with this.
How often do we get that federal? I know we get an audit for federal funds that go through the state. Is this a different audit?
This was ESSER only.
Oh.
And for
okay.
us, they only picked ARP ESSER. So other districts might have had ESSER 2. Other districts might have had set aside. We were ARP ESSER only. And they were specifically looking at, they pulled a sampling of ton of different documents that we had to show them. We went through the whole process to follow the guidelines.
But the people that were auditing us for federal funds that come to the state, they never caught that we didn't have a
No.
FAR policy.
Or the things in the report. I mean, this isn't new federal programs
Yeah.
information.
Because we get that one, what, every 5 years?
Yeah, just
Yeah,
about.
somewhere in there.
And they never caught it.
No, so this school year, we get that monitoring. We get Title 1, 2, 3, 4. So we feel great with all these changes we just made. We feel like our federal programs is pretty tight right now.
Okay, so it is the policy that you'll be on the consent agenda.
Yes.
You're
Is
finished.
that it? Good job. My voice was getting
But
tired.
Mrs. Hunsinger,
Okay.
we have a purchase agreement from you.
Thank you, Jill. Yes, I don't know if you have, if you followed the grant awards by the Education Foundation this year, you have. And it was one of the largest set of awards ever made, and one of which was the Freight Farm. That total award was for just under $180,000. And what the Freight Farm is, it is literally a shipping container that's set up with, climate-controlled area to grow hydroponics. You can grow up to 600, 700, 800 heads of lettuce a week, which just astounds me. It's equivalent to about 2.5 acres of farmland, and it will serve as modern classroom used for STEM educational and extracurricular programming, problem solving, and collaboration for students. So it's really a dynamic initiative. Jay Grisafi has been leading that project and is very committed to this. So we got the agreement from Freight Farm, and original agreement, they wanted us to pay 100% upfront for the shipping container, which we would not do. We agreed to 10%, if you're okay with that, 10% down payment of about $15,000. And then we pay them the balance upon delivery. There's a lot of site work that Ken Johnson has to work on, as well as some technology issues to run, make sure that we've got Wi-Fi there that Joshua is going to be working on too. So we don't have a timeline nailed down yet, but what this agreement does is it reserves our Freight Farm for us. And as long as we take delivery by December 31st, which hopefully will be many months ahead of that, we won't have to pay for any type of a storage fee with them.
So the grant pays for the Freight Farm,
Yes.
but we have expenses of our own to cover.
Some of that's built into this. Some of that's built into the total grant. The total grant award was about $180,000, and the agreement for Freight Farm is just under $158,000.
Oh, so we have some cash
Yes.
there from that grant to cover these setup
Yes.
fees. I see.
Ken was working with Jay
My
Grisafi
only
on
other
that.
question is, has anyone discussed what they're going to do with 800 heads of lettuce?
I don't know if you saw this too. They did just name it. They're calling it the Campus Greenery. There have been a lot of different options that we could be selling to the public, raising some funds that way to help support some of the continued costs involved with the Freight Farm.
Gives you a food bank.
Donation, right?
Yeah, a lot of donations maybe to food banks too, and that's a whole nother, actually.
Because our kids in the school can only eat so much salad.
Right. Absolutely. I'm sure that Jay Grisafi would love to share a lot of this with you once the endeavor is really up and
Yeah,
running.
and who's going to be in charge of running this program,
Jay Grisafi,
Okay.
yeah. Yeah, he's got another team. I think Mel Upton's working closely with him as well, too.
Oh, yeah,
Mhm.
great.
Yes.
I can't wait to see it.
It sounds really cool. I
Yeah.
like it.
Excuse me?
How do you like your lettuce?
It's a lot of Russian dressing on it. And tomatoes and cucumbers and green peppers and, I think
Slow
it's
down.
great.
It's lettuce first. Asking for all the peripherals around there.
That's like vanilla.
I mean, just as an aside, I would be interested in a presentation.
Yeah.
Mhm.
By him at some point, whenever it's
Oh,
appropriate.
Yeah, oh, yes, definitely. He would love to.
Yeah.
He'd love to do that. He
Yeah,
could
he
even
might
sell
share
heads of
his
lettuce as
show.
people are going to the stadium.
Yeah, that's really
Yeah.
nice.
Well, I don't know, would all of us fit inside that
We'll take it if they
presentation?
want, we shall.
How big is
That
this?
right, girl.
Okay,
Cool.
thank you.
Thank you guys very much.
Thank you.
Okay, that gives us a very long consent agenda for next week, which takes about 3 minutes. So I will move on to if there's any concerns about next week's agenda. If not, is there anyone from the public who would like to address the board at this time? Well, I will stand up in substitution for Mrs. Tyson, congratulate her on her Will Award this year at graduation. Board matters. Any board initiatives anyone would like to bring up? Good. In that case, I need a motion to adjourn to executive session for legal or personnel reasons.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
There are no nays. We are adjourned.
Except I'll miss you next week because I'll be at the beach.